Let's start with a really interesting question. If you had everything you could ever want, if you were totally, completely content, would you still work? It might sound like a modern dilemma, but we're going to dive into some ancient wisdom that has a pretty surprising answer.
Seriously, think about it for a second. Imagine you've reached a state of perfect inner peace. No more goals to chase, no desires, nothing you personally need. Do you still get out of bed in the morning and do stuff? It's a heck of a thought experiment, and it's the exact puzzle at the heart of what we're talking about today.
This isn't a new question at all. It has deep ancient roots. In fact, one of its most famous expressions is right here, in the Bhagavad Gita. We're looking at Arjuna, this legendary warrior, completely frozen on the battlefield. He's full of doubt, totally confused about what his duty is. His crisis is the launchpad for one of the most profound conversations ever about why we act.
Okay, so this brings us to what we can call the dilemma of action. It's a genuine paradox. If a person is enlightened, totally content, with zero personal skin in the game, what on earth would motivate them to do anything? Why not just sit back and chill for eternity?
The philosophy is pretty straightforward on this. Once someone hits that state of self-realization, total contentment, all the things that drive the rest of us, duty, ambition, needing stuff, they just dissolve. In a very real sense, that person is completely free.
And this isn't just someone's opinion. The Gita puts it in black and white. If you are totally content in the self, you have no duty. So, there's the paradox, laid bare. If you have no obligation and no reason to act for yourself, why would you? This is exactly what was bugging Arjuna.
So how in the world do you solve this puzzle? Well, the answer comes down to a really powerful two-word concept. This is the solution: Lok-Sangraha.
Lok-Sangraha. It literally translates to something like holding the world together, or world maintenance. It's this incredible idea of acting not for yourself, but for the good of everyone, for the stability and well-being of the whole system. It's a motivation that's completely beyond personal gain.
And boom, here it is. This is the aha moment. The text basically says, look at the greats of the past, like King Janaka. They reached perfection through action. And then it gives a direct command. Even if you don't need to, you should act for the sake of Lok-Sangraha, the maintenance of the world order.
So let's just lay this out, side by side. On the one hand, you have action for yourself. This is what most of us are familiar with, right? It's driven by our wants, and the goal is to get something for ourselves. But on the other side, you have action for Lok-Sangraha. That's driven by a sense of duty, and the goal is the welfare of the entire world. It's a complete flip in your reason for being.
Now, to make sure this doesn't just stay a cool theory, the Gita gives us a perfect role model. Let's take a look at the poster child for this ideal, the philosopher king, Janaka.
So, who was this guy, Janaka? Well, he was a legend, a king who was also a fully realized sage. Basically, he had already won the game of life. He'd reached that state of ultimate wisdom and contentment we've been talking about. He needed nothing.
So what did he do? Did he drop his crown and go meditate in a cave for the rest of his life? Not a chance. King Janaka kept on ruling, and he did it with incredible care. Not for power, not for fame, not for riches. He didn't need any of that. He was doing it purely for Lok-Sangraha, for the good of his people. His entire life was an example of selfless action. Janaka is a fantastic example, but there are other stories that make this idea even more vivid and, well, epic. So let's check out another legend, the story of King Prithu. Take a look at this image. You see a king and the cow. But this isn't just some peaceful day in the countryside. What you're looking at is the climax of a desperate, high-stakes chase to save a world that was literally starving to death.
So the legend goes like this. The world was in a terrible crisis, a huge famine. The earth itself was holding back all its goodness. Seeing his people suffering, King Prithu knew he had to act. He actually chased down the earth, who had taken the form of a cow. And when he finally caught her, he didn't harm her. Instead, he basically became the world's first dairy farmer. He milked the earth cow, and out came all the grains and plants, saving everyone. It's just this beautiful metaphor for a leader's duty to work for the good of all.
All right, so from these amazing stories of Janaka and Prithu, let's pull it all together. Let's talk about what this means for the path of the wise. Because these aren't just cool myths, they're pointing to a really deep truth about why the wise keep working.
And this verse, this is the secret sauce. This is the ultimate reason. The wise act because everybody else is watching.
People look up to great individuals. Their actions set the example for the rest of us. If the wise just stopped and did nothing, everyone else might get confused and think that's the goal. It could lead to chaos.
So let's just recap. Why do they do it? They work to set the standard for everyone else. They do it to keep society stable and moving forward. They do it to keep people from giving up or getting confused, and at the end of the day, they do it for the universal good. Their work is a gift.
So when you boil it all down, the final takeaway is huge. The path of wisdom isn't about escaping the world and stopping all action. It's about completely transforming why you act. Your whole motivation shifts from what's in it for me to how can I help? It's the journey from selfish to selfless. And that brings the whole thing right back to you. It's a really powerful question to sit with. If you could take personal gain completely off the table, no money, no fame, no credit, what would you do just for the good of the world? That's really something to think about.